So what does my new left side become? Is that like negative 21x something? No? You can't combine these, right? These are not like terms. They don't have the same variable to the same power. So I just write them next to each other. And then the right side is 0. And now that looks exactly like the previous problem, right? And what are you going to do? GCF. After let's GCF first. What is the greatest common factor?
3.
I can pull a 3 out. I can also pull an x out. I could also pull a negative 3x. It's really up to you. Let's take a vote. How many of you would pull a positive 3x? Negative 3x? Okay, I'm going to do negative 3x. All right, make sure you get your signs right here. What's still in here? X plus 6. Good. Now that you've got it broken down into 2 factors, you set each one of those equal to 0. So I'm going to set negative 3x equal to 0. I'm going to set x plus 6 equal to 0 and solve each of those equations. What's that one going to be? 0. And divide by negative 3, it's not going to have any impact. It's still going to be 0 divided by negative 3, it's still 0. Over here, move the 6 over, so subtract 6 on both sides, negative 6. We have 2 answers. Okay so far? All right? Okay. So what about the last case, which would be nothing is missing, everything's there. So an example of this would be x squared minus 6x equals 7. Is this the first case where you're missing the x term? No. Is this the second case where you're missing the constant term? No. Does everyone see that? You do have a constant term here, 7, something other than 0. All right, so you're not missing either one. So how do we go about solving this? We're going to get everything to one side. All right, we're going to move everything to the, in this case, to the left side. We're going to try and get a 0 over here. So we subtract x on both sides. And then what? Okay, I don't think we have a GCF, right? But we could look at that. There's no GCF here. But you're on the right track. We are going to try and factor the left-hand side. Right? Because look, we know that if we can turn it into multiplication, we can set each one equal to 0. But we have to be able to turn this into multiplication first. And that's called factoring. This is what we just spent a couple of days on. This is what that big old handout's about. So on the left-hand side, you will factor this. Now, this is now a step that I'm not going to show all the detail on. All right? I'm going to assume that you could go from this step to the next step. Given enough time on the side, you do the work. All right? And hopefully you would come up with x minus 7, x plus 1 as your 2 factors. So if you need to, draw a little asterisks from here to here, like, yes, that does require a little bit of work. You create your little table. However you do it, right? Now I have 2 factors, right? Set each of them equal to 0. And you should get 2 answers here. They are x equals 7 and x is negative 1. Questions?
We all get answers for case, or get 2 answers for case number 3 and 2?
Well, if we're going to include the I's as possible answers, then yes. But if you're going to exclude the I's, it is possible to have less than 2. All right. What was the problem that you asked me at the beginning of class, number 18? Can you remind me of what it was? It was like negative 2x squared, I believe. Oh, sorry. Here, I've got it right here. Oh, maybe I don't. Minus 7x plus 5 equals 0. What type of equation is this? It's quadratic, right? That's quadratic. And is it the first case where you're missing the x term? No. Is it the second case where you're missing the constant term? No, it's the third case where nothing is missing, right? And what did we do on the last problem when nothing was missing? We factored it. But we already saw at the beginning of class, this does not factor, right? So what we said in the past was prime. But that's if we were trying to factor. If the problem was this and it said factor, we would say prime. But the fact that this is now an equation becomes a completely different ball game, and we do have a way of solving this equation. It requires a formula. You have heard of it, I'm sure. We need what's called the quadratic formula. You've heard of this, right? Quadratic. Maybe once I write it out, you'll remember. It's kind of ugly. So here's how it goes. All right. If you are looking at an equation that looks like this, okay? So if you have that equation, which we do, right? We have an equation that looks like that. Then the answers, okay? There will be 2 answers. They are x equals, and then here's what they'll be. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, the entire quantity divided by 2 times a. Now, does that look familiar to you? Have you seen that at some point in your life? You remember seeing this at some point? This is the almighty quadratic formula. It allows us to solve any quadratic equation. Any quadratic equation. And if we have answers that involve I, this will take care of it. We'll get those answers also. Notice the plus or minus in here. The plus or minus comes from the idea that you're going to get 2 different answers, right? So this formula is kind of what I call a monkey formula. This is a plug and chug. You know, I can teach a monkey to use a formula. Just do this in here, this in there, and then you just have to compute. You don't have to think about, oh, I've got to factor and come up with 2 numbers that do this and that. You don't have to think about it. You just have to plug numbers in. That's it. Monkey see, monkey do. Got it? The problem in the monkey see, monkey do is that there are lots of places where you can make mistakes in this formula. And the biggest place that people make mistakes is this piece right here. They mess that part up. So I'm going to pay close attention to that when we start using the formula. All right? So if we're going to do this formula, we need to identify A, B, and C. So let's write down A, B, and C first. What's A for us, what's B for us, and what's C for us? So A is negative 2. All right, negative 2. Make sure you bring the sign with it. What is B for us? Negative 7. Make sure you bring the sign. And then what is C? 5. So that's the first part of the formula. You just identify A, B, and C. Once you identify A, B, and C, you just replace A here, replace this B with whatever you have, Place that C with whatever you have, and then you have to compute that. That's it.
What if that's a negative 7?
Yeah, let's talk about that, okay? Let's actually do it. I'm going to do that problem right here. X is equal to, the first thing is a little confusing, negative b. But see, our b is already negative, right? So we want to take the negative of that. What's negative of negative 7? Positive 7. So just think about it this way. This negative b is the opposite of what you see. All right? So if you see a negative 7, that's going to be plus 7. So that top left corner, this one right here, is going to be positive 7 plus or minus the square root of. Now, this piece right here is b squared. B squared will always be positive. All right? B squared, that top left piece, right? Not this one. This right here will always be a positive number because you're squaring something, right? So if you take your b, here's your b, and you square it, what's negative 7 times negative 7?
49.
Positive 49. That's another place I see students make a mistake. Right here, they'll put negative 49. It will never be negative in this formula. Ever, ever, ever. This will never be a negative number. With me? All right, so here's the part that's confusing. So I'm just going to write this down. Minus 4 times, now I'm going to do two sets of parentheses for the things I'm going to plug in there. A and then C. A is what? Negative 2, and C is 5. Then this entire thing divided by 2 times A. So I'm going to do another parentheses. A is negative 2. That's just me plugging everything in. That good? We're not done, but is that all right? Okay. Let's focus on this piece right here. Like I said, that's the part that people mess up. My suggestion to you, all right, and you can take the suggestion or not, it's really up to you. I like to cover up the minus sign and look at those three numbers to the right. I have 4 times negative 2 times 5, right? Is that going to be a negative or a positive number? These two together are going to be what? Negative. And if I take a negative number and multiply it times a positive, I will have negative number. So I should get a negative number when I multiply these together. So go ahead. 4 times that, that should give you what? 40? Negative 40. Agreed? Negative 40. So I'm going to write it down again. I'm going to write down 7 plus or minus square root. I had 49. Then I had minus, right? This was minus. I was covering it up. And you told me that those three numbers were negative 40, right? So I'm going to write down next to this negative 40. See how I wrote that? All over. I hadn't done the bottom yet. 2 times negative 2. Negative 4, right? Now, what do you get when you take a minus a negative number? If you subtract a negative, what happens? Double negative becomes plus, right? That becomes an addition. So this now becomes 7 plus or minus the square root of 49 plus 40 all over negative 4. I'm almost there. 49 plus 40 is 89. 7 plus or minus square root of 89, then over negative 4. Yes? Now let's see if we can break down root 89. That's what we started with, right? The class we talked about roots. Does 89 break down? Has to be two things multiplied together. So I'm trying to break down root 89. So what would you start dividing that by? 4. The perfect squares, right? So try your perfect squares. 89 divided by 4 is not going to work, right? 89 divided by, what's the next one I should try? 9? Not going to work. What's the next one I should try? 16? Nope. Next one? Not going to work. Next one? 36. Does 36 work? No. 49. Does 49 work? Nope. 64. Okay, so nothing's going to work, right? Which means that doesn't go down any further. this for today is our answer. Now I realize that that looks like that doesn't even look like it's a number or two numbers, but it is. We could take, on our calculator, we could do the square root of 89, get a decimal, and then we could do 7 plus that and then divide. We're going to pick up where we left off next class, but let me tell you what you should do for homework. For homework, do page 61. All of page 61 is fair. And I believe that's probably it. Who was it? Someone emailed me about all the homework assignments. Is that you? Okay, so what was your name?
Jacob.
Jacob is requesting that I provide all the homework assignments I've given because you're just trying to make sure you have everything done, right? I don't have everything written down. Does anybody have all the homeworks written down in a nice, neat manner that can share with Jacob? No? Maybe? I will give you 5 points on your next test if you provide that to Jacob. All right? You can like maybe take a picture of whatever she has. So you two would coordinate that? Okay. And y'all can work out. If you can do it now, great. If not, you can do it next class, whatever. Y'all work it out. All right, everyone. I'll see you on Thursday. Do your homework.